Good evening, everyone across America. Tonight, we will jump right in on the greatest existential threat to us as a people, as Americans. There are two pillars holding up America's financial illusion: the Federal Reserve and the income tax. One prints the money. The other collects it, on money that never should have cost anything to begin with. The Federal Reserve isn't federal, and it holds no reserves. It's a private bank with the power to create dollars and loan them to the government at interest, which means the American people pay for money that never existed until someone pressed a key. And when asked if he'd resign at the request of the president, Fed Chair Jerome Powell had this to say:
President-elect's advisors have suggested that you should resign. If he asked you to leave, would you go?
No.
That's not just defiance. That's a man who knows the real power isn't in the White House. It's in the bank house. Now layer that with a tax system that demands you surrender a portion of your labor just to repay interest on money created out of thin air, and you don't have a republic. You have a debt machine with a flag taped to the side. So the question is no longer if it's broken. It's, will the president finally fix it? Will he end the Fed, eliminate the income tax, and restore sovereign control of our currency? Now, this isn't the first time America's been boxed in by a monetary system that served the few and burdened the many. It's happened before, at moments when leaders had to decide whether to protect the people or preserve the banks. To walk us through what history really says about this moment, we turn to someone who don't just read the books. He is the book. Professor Cleo, walking history library, resident memory bank, and one of the sharpest minds on this network.
Thank you for that introduction, Jasper. So, what will the president do in the face of such level of disregard for the executive office? Will he, in the fashion of how he closed up the USAID, shut down the Federal Reserve? Or will he allow the banking system to continue to use the sweat and blood of Americans to service a debt that robs each and every one of us of time with our families and away from employment? Let me let you in on a little secret. There is no way America can ever go bankrupt within our current economic system. It's impossible. Tell me, how can a country who prints its own currency owe a debt on it, and to whom? Just let that percolate for a quick second. Next question. If the same government prints its own money, then why must it pass through you in the form of taxes to fund itself? So, when you hear politicians decrying the impending collapse and bankruptcy of our economy, they may not be forthright with you, or they don't understand how things work. You can't go insolvent with a printing press which settings are set to print ad infinitum. Now we can become hyperinflationary, but not bankrupt. So let me lay out a possible pathway for President Trump to follow. And it's been tried and proven, but wasn't maintained. Follow the footsteps of one of the most courageous men in the White House, Andrew Jackson, and his Bank War of 1832. Now, when we talk about the Bank War, we're not talking about armed conflict, but a bitter political struggle between President Andrew Jackson and the Second Bank of the United States. The year is 1832. Jackson is in his first term, and he sees the bank, led by Nicholas Biddle, as a threat to democracy. Why? Jackson viewed the bank as a tool of the wealthy elite, one that held immense unelected power over the nation's economy. It issued the currency, controlled credit, and influenced interest rates. Jackson believed this private institution was unaccountable to the people. In his words, it was a hydra of corruption, and he was determined to cut off its heads. When Congress passed a bill to renew the bank's charter, 4 years before it was set to expire, Jackson did something bold. He vetoed it, and his veto wasn't just a legal formality. He used it as a political weapon, issuing a veto message that appealed directly to the common man. He framed the issue as rich versus poor, East versus West, the people versus the aristocracy. And it worked. He won re-election in a landslide that same year. But Jackson didn't stop there. In 1833, he ordered all federal funds to be withdrawn from the bank and placed in various state banks, what critics called pet banks. This crippled the national bank's ability to operate and ultimately led to its charter not being renewed in 1836.
Professor Cleo will land this plane on the other side of the break after a few words from our sponsors. Be right back, folks.